more wrestling action coming up here in just a few minutes. In addition to that, we got, or as part of that, got a great six-man tag team match coming up. And this man right here will be part of that six-man tag team action. The King, Jerry Lawler, headed this way. He's been involved in the last few weeks against the Moondogs and Richard Lee, and last time around, he ran into Big Black Dog, that huge wrestler that Richard Lee has brought in here. And King, that's what's ahead this week, that huge, huge guy.
I know, that's exactly right. You know, first of all, we have got, let's get a shot of that. What a great crowd we got over here today. But, now wait a minute, this is probably an overflow crowd. Is that all the noise you people can make? That's right. Now I understand that it's a little difficult to get very excited when they got to look at these jerks like the Moondogs out here. But when the King comes out, we want him to get a little bit excited. Now let me tell you, let me talk for just a second here about this Big Black Dog that Richard Lee has gone out and found. And you saw what happened last week. When the match was over, sure, it was a long, wild match. It was a crazy match. There were chairs flying. There were ball bats. There were garbage cans. But the main thing, the only thing that I remember is the end of the match, I was laying flat on my back, and the referee was counting 1, 2, 3. Now, that don't sit too well with me. I want you to understand that, first of all. I don't care how many stitches the Moondogs got in their head. I don't care how many garbage cans we busted over their heads. When I get pinned, I don't like it. I'm upset. Now, Richard Lee, I want you to listen up, and I want your Moondogs to listen real close, too, because I'm going to tell you just a little short story about when I was a kid growing up. Of course, I was born right in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee is my hometown. But when I was about 7 years old, my father worked for Ford Motor Company. When I was about 7 years old, they closed down the Ford Motor plant in Memphis, Tennessee, and they opened one up in Lorain, Ohio. Now, that was right up on the shores of Lake Erie. And we took our family, and we moved up to Lorain, Ohio. And, brother, it was cold up there. It was like from moving to Memphis, it was like we moved to the moon or something. I had never been in any place that cold. And we had to walk to school. Me and the 3 little friends up there, we had to walk to school every day. Real cold, snow on the ground, and there was a shortcut we could take to school, and it would only take us maybe 10 minutes to get there if we could take this shortcut. But the only problem with taking this shortcut, Dave, was we had to cut through some people's yard that unfortunately had a big black dog in that yard. That's right. Now, I'm not talking, it wasn't a Doberman, it wasn't a German Shepherd, it was just a big mutt. It was a big mongrel. I don't know exactly what it was, one of those kind they call Heinz 57, I'm sure. But it was a big, black, mean dog. And the problem was, when that dog was up and running around, we couldn't go through that yard. Because we knew that if that dog got a hold of us, he would tear us up. There would be nothing left of us. So what we had to do was we had to take the long way around, and we had to take an extra 10 or 15 minutes, and it would be real cold, and that made me hate that big black dog. I hated that dog real bad. Now, one day, Dave, when the spring came, we were on our way to school, and we were walking past that yard, and we looked over, and that big black dog was laying there sound asleep. The sun was shining, and he was laid out, stretched out, sunning himself, and he was sound asleep. And one of my friends said, hey, I can't take credit for this. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I wish I'd done it, but my friend did it. He said, come on over here. And there was, in that backyard, there was a can of gasoline where I guess they used to cut the grass, the lawnmower sitting there. He took that can of gasoline, and while that dog was asleep, he poured some of that gas real quietly on that dog's tail. That's right. You know what's coming. He reached in his pocket, and he took out a match, and he lit that dog's tail on fire, and the first thing you know, that dog's eyes got about that big, and the first thing he saw was me and my friends, and the next thing we saw was that dog hightailing it right on out of there with that big black tail on fire. Now, let me just tell you this. From that day on, whenever we went to school in the morning and that dog saw us, first of all, he didn't have much of a tail left. It looked like sort of like the end of a match that had been burned up. Just a little black stump was left there. But every time that dog saw us, he would, as fast as he could, he would run the other way. So we walked right through that yard every morning, and that dog would run up against that house, and he would cower down in the corner of that yard and let us walk right through that yard. And you know why he did that? Because that dog had the fear of the fire put in him. And I'm going to tell you something, Moondogs, and especially you, big black dog. You left me laying flat on my back in the middle of that ring. But this week, you're looking at the man that's going to put the fear of the fire in the big black dog. Is that what I'm talking about? We're going to put the fear of the fire in a big black dog. And after this week, I promise you, Richard Lee, and I promise you, Moondog, when that big black dog sees me from now on, he's going to turn his big tail and he's going to run the other way. And that's not a threat. That's a promise from the king to you, boys.